think there's a lot of people that have a distorted perception of what I do, maybe based on sound bites or based on headlines of articles that are disparaging. The podcast has been accused of spreading dangerous misinformation, specifically about 2 episodes, a little bit about some other ones, but specifically about 2. One with Dr. Peter McCullough and one with Dr. Robert Malone. Dr. Peter McCullough is a cardiologist, and he is the most published physician in his field in history. Dr. Robert Malone owns 9 patents on the creation of mRNA vaccine technology and is at least partially responsible for the creation of the technology that led to mRNA vaccines. Both these people are very highly credentialed, very intelligent, very accomplished people, and they have an opinion that's different from the mainstream narrative. I wanted to hear what their opinion is. I had them on, and because of that, those episodes in particular, those episodes were labeled as being dangerous. They had dangerous misinformation in them. The problem I have with the term misinformation, especially today, is that many of the things that we thought of as misinformation just a short while ago are now accepted as fact.
All right, guys, so as you can see there, that is Joe Rogan's response to the whole Spotify controversy, right? And the mainstream liberal media plus woke revolutionaries coming after the man purely because he is platforming ideas that are outside of the mainstream narrative. Right? Guys, I'm going to tell you something. I've never seen anything like this, right? I've never seen anything like this, okay? The effort to censor a man whom just simply is saying, hey, here are some different ideas from established doctors and scientists, established medical professionals, right? That's all he's doing. But for whatever reason, that is a sin in our society, okay? Now, I knew that mainstream liberal media was jealous of, Joe Rogan because he has a larger audience than they do, right? A lot of these journalists, they simply don't like Joe Rogan because he doesn't have a degree in journalism, right? He didn't really study journalism. He wasn't a news reporter. He's just some dude that's into MMA and a comedian that, has a podcast where he likes to talk about smoking weed, aliens, and all types of other crazy stuff, right? And because he can garner such a huge audience and he is kind of seen as like kind of a news guy or somebody's opinion that matters when it comes to the news, a lot of these people are jealous, right? They really are. But the reality of the situation is simply that Joe Rogan, the only difference between him and these other guys is that these other guys pretend not to be opinion hosts, right? People like Don Lemon, Joy Reid, Brian Seltzer, they're all opinion hosts. They act like they're objective journalists, but they're really not. They got to spin just like everybody else. The thing I can say about Joe Rogan is that his spin is simply like, okay, this is just what I believe, right? This is my opinion. It is what it is. Some of his views align with the left. Some of them align with the right. For the most part, I think that Joe Rogan is actually on the left. So these guys are really attacking one of their own here simply because the dude is like, yeah, I mean, we should have a debate about what's going on in regards to this pandemic. The science is not set in stone. And like he said in that video, a lot of things that were misinformation last year or 2 years ago when this pandemic first started are now treated as fact, right? It is what it is. So when science is currently evolving over time, I think it's important to platform different ideas, right? That's how everybody becomes educated. But hey, networks like CNN are still not satisfied with Joe Rogan.
Kat, you wrote on Twitter about Spotify. You went viral for a comment about it yesterday. Tell us your point of view first about this Spotify mess, because it's really dominated the week.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about the backlash against Spotify vis-a-vis Joe Rogan is that people are fundamentally angry about not being able to stop his audience from wanting news that is bad for them, wanting something that's bad for them. So, we're all haunted by the specter of this guy who's listening to Joe Rogan and internalizing this bad information and making bad choices as a result. But Rogan is like a weed that sprang up outside the mainstream media ecosystem, and he thrived there, and he has this huge audience. And that's what's really scary, that Spotify could kick him off tomorrow and it wouldn't make a dent. It wouldn't make a dent in his audience. People would still listen to him. And crucially, they still wouldn't trust more mainstream media sources. And I think that's what's really, really frightening to people.
Oliver, do you agree?
Right. So, yeah, that's CNN, Brian Seltzer, and his guests still going on about how Joe Rogan is giving out bad information, right? And they're telling you exactly how they feel. They don't like the fact that people listen to him and they receive the so-called bad information and he keeps getting a larger audience, right? But for whatever reason, a lot of these people won't actually go on Joe Rogan's show and to combat the so-called misinformation, right? To provide a counter argument. Even though Joe says that, he's going to try to provide more balance to his podcast, right? He said, listen, I'm going to try to have people from both sides of the aisle, in regards to a certain subject on back to back so that, people get proper context around the debate. And that's fine. But at the same time, I don't want to really see Joe Rogan and Spotify cave because there's a whole lot of pressure, right? There's a whole lot of artists out there that are saying that, hey, now I'm going to boycott. Right, Neil Young started, and then some other irrelevant people, I don't even know their names, right? Now they're like, we're boycotting. And I told you guys in one of my videos about the Neil Young boycott, him doing it in and of itself, him saying, I want to take my songs off Spotify, him doing it by himself means nothing, right? Spotify's not going to miss that guy. But what happens is that if he starts a trend of artists doing this in order to woke virtue signal, that is what's going to cause a problem, right? Because Spotify could actually be hurt by that significantly, okay? And that's what we're kind of starting to see here. There are people that are removing their music from the platform that, again, could start a movement, could start a trend. And I really, really, really hate seeing this, guys. I really hate seeing this back and forth and, this argument about somebody that's simply platforming a different idea, right? Just a different way of thinking, different science. It's absolutely insane that this is the world that we live in, right? It's insane. But anyways, let's read a little bit here about, what's going on in Joe Rogan's response and Spotify's response to this whole, issue. So let's read here. Joe Rogan defended himself on Sunday, but vowed to try harder to offer more balance on his podcast in his first public response to the growing protests facing Spotify over COVID-19 misinformation. Rogan's comments came after the streaming service announced that it would add a content advisory to any podcast episode that discusses the coronavirus. The move came after several musicians, led by Neil Young, said they were pulling their music from the platform over its failure to take action against the spread of falsehoods about vaccines. Its star podcaster, who signed a $100 million deal giving the streaming service exclusive rights to the show in 2020, has been the center of growing backlash. Rogan responded in a 10-minute video post on Instagram. He said he would do my best to make sure I research these topics and try harder to get people with different opinions on the show, which reaches an estimated 11 million listeners per episode. Okay, so, listen, here's the thing, man. I think Rogan already does that, right? He bought on Sanjay Gupta, okay? And he confronted Sanjay Gupta. And in that exchange, Sanjay Gupta kind of looked like a fool. Right, to a certain extent. But he's already done that. Fauci doesn't want to go on. Right? Biden's chief surgeon general, he doesn't want to go on. These so-called people that sit up on mainstream liberal media and talk all this junk about Rogan, right? And call for censorship, including some of these other journalists that aren't necessarily doctors but act like they're doctors, right? They don't want to go on a podcast and have a discussion about this, right? They'd rather just sit on their high horse from their TV networks and to call for the man to be deplatformed. Quote, I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial. He said, I've never tried to do anything with this podcast other than just talk to people and have interesting conversations. Facts. So yeah, in response to this, in a nutshell, Spotify has decided they're going to add a content advisory, right? So anytime you talk about COVID, right, on Spotify, what they're going to do is that they're going to add an advisory to the podcast, letting people know, hey, this is a discussion about, coronavirus. Same thing YouTube does, right? And yeah, this is coming as a lot of people speaking out about this, right? You even got Prince Harry and Meghan Markle chiming in on this, right? And I believe that they actually got paid like $20-some million for a podcast that they actually never did, right, on Spotify or something like that. Okay? And these guys also have like this pro-censorship organization where they're trying to combat so-called disinformation. So again, these people in America, Prince Harry specifically, not an American, in here trying to dictate our free speech in this country. Right? He should be deported just for that, right? You should be deported back to England and deal with your damn family issues, right? Before you come over here trying to censor people, right? That's how I feel about that. So, I mean, you got a whole lot of stuff going on here, guys, that, in my opinion, it's really just sad, man. Like, that we live in a country in a time where this type of stuff is acceptable. This is cool. But you can't even have a difference of opinion. And if you do, people are going to try to silence you. Even if it's not necessarily your opinion. Even if it's an opinion of established doctors and scientists. It's absolutely nuts. It's insane, man. It's insane. This country is heading in the wrong direction. It really is. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.